Dave Lochran. Oh, no. Oh, man. That's what happens when you eat before the show. And Adam Shaw bringing you a 10-game slate. Apologies for that heinous behavior of mine. Adam, we got a lot to talk about today. Glad to have everybody with us. Looking forward to usher you into the weekend nicely. Hopefully we have some good nights. It was a pretty good night last night. Nobody got random benching. I thought I was in big trouble, actually, to start off the night because I didn't play Okafor, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I didn't max in it. Like, here we go. Okafor about to kill me. And then he didn't play like in 27 minutes, so pretty lucky in that regard. But nevertheless, this slate brings us some wildness. Nikola Jokic is suspended. Teague and Rose are both officially questionable. We'll get into that status later. Rashawn Holmes also questionable. DeAndre Ayton already ruled out. Chris Paul isn't returning yet. He's expected back on Sunday, though. What else do we have, Adam? There's a whole lot here. We don't exactly know what's going on with the Knicks rotation either. Go ahead.
No, Rudy Gobert is questionable.
Right. That's another one, and that came out later. Yeah, so we'll see. Emmanuel Mudiay, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Dion Waiters, all questionable as well. There's a lot, and we're going to get into all of it starting right now. Let's do it. Let's kick it off with Washington and Orlando. Orlando Magic at home, 3.5-point favorites, 218 total. Let's talk about Vooch for a minute here. He's just been outstanding, Adam. He just, continuously puts out monster games. And now his block rate. Look at the blocks recently. He's even adding there. But he's a great facilitator for a big man, his rebounding rate, everything at career highs this year, including his price point. So now, you're looking at a $9,700 Vooch on DraftKings, a 10-2 Vooch on FanDuel against a Washington team that is still very ill-equipped to deal with him, but as you put it, has been better defensively lately. What do you make of Vooch tonight?
Right. I mean, I think he's fine in tournaments. Like, the upside's clearly there. As far as an optimal play goes, it's hard to put him ahead of Cat, especially if Teague and or Rose are going to be out. And obviously the center position, as always, is deep. So it's still tough to really, prioritize him. I think that it very well could be another situation like we had the other day where he goes out and has a very good game, but because of his price point and because of the performance of other players, you still don't really need him. So I'll be happy with whatever Vooch I get in tournaments, but it's not a priority for me just because of the other options.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Vooch is $800 or $900 cheaper than Towns on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's $300 cheaper. But we already liked Towns at this discounted cost, and now if Rudy Gobert is out, then he becomes an even better play just based on the matchup alone. So it is tough there, but my guess is, and let me know where you're at here, comparing Vooch to Towns. Let's take him on DraftKings, for example, where they're $300 separated. If Rudy Gobert sits and we get that news, relatively early, my guess is that you see Towns' ownership come up even higher. And right now, we have him projected at 19% ownership on a 10-game slate against Utah. That's still pretty high. Not concerning. I still like it. It's not something that would take me off of him. Let me be clear. But it is a little higher than I expected. It must be because the price has come down.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the ownership pivot would be appealing. The thing is, I still have Towns projected for somewhere between 8 and 10 fantasy points more than Vooch, even though I have Vooch projected to have a really good game. So it's not even like it's comparing really, really similar projections at a huge ownership gap. Like the projection gap is there as well.
I'm not even, no, I wasn't saying that I'm enticed by the pivot. What I'm saying is I'd be curious to know what the ownership looks like if it changes a lot, because think about that. We have Vooch and Towns separated by 3% on DraftKings right now. That heavily favors Towns. Like, if you're playing anyone right now, it's Towns. If Vooch is expected to be almost identically owned.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. I thought Vooch was already a lot lower than Towns. Yeah, I would assume that because if Gobert sits, people won't be as worried about the blowout either, in addition to his defense. So I'd assume that if we get news he's out, you do see Vooch come down and Towns go up.
Right. Yeah. The rest of this Orlando team, we can talk about it a little bit. I don't I don't have ample interest here. Aaron Gordon, 6,500 on DraftKings. His price has come down. That injury scare seems to be, well in the past now. And then you're talking about the Fourniers and the Terrence Rosses and the DJ Augustines. Anything else stand out to you for the Magic?
No, nothing really that's a priority here for me. Washington is playing slower. They're playing better defensively. If I get to some Aaron Gordon or Fournier, that's fine. But the only guy that I really like is Vooch. And then because of the position that he plays and his price point, that's still not a priority for me.
All right. Washington, on the other hand, Otto Porter getting a significant run, continuing to come off the bench, but I like what I'm seeing from him. A close game puts him around 35 minutes, and I'll take that all day. About 1.09 fantasy points per minute since the start of January, which is also when he returned from injury. And then outside of him, you've got guys like Satoransky and Ariza and Thomas Bryant, so on and so forth. I do want to spend a little time talking about Otto Porter and Bradley Beal against the Magic.
Yeah, I really like Porter's role right now. He's, like you said, he's playing around 35 minutes in competitive games. He's got a 23.8% usage rate. He's got almost a 12% rebounding percentage, which is up a little bit for him. He's involved somewhat as a facilitator as well, which is really nice and something that we're not used to seeing from him. He disappointed last game, yesterday. He shot 0 for 7 from 3. That's just kind of something you have to live with. But, the opportunities are certainly there for him. And I just really like the role here. And he hasn't really had consistent monster games to raise his price tag. So I'm still not sure how much I'll get on this particular slate because it's just such a weird slate in terms of, stars and scrubs and kind of just ending up on a couple guys around Porter that I like a little bit more. But I still think the price tag's just lower than his ceiling really is.
Yeah, I think so too. Like yesterday, if you didn't play Beal, you were glad you didn't because, as we talked about, the pivots surrounding him were just better. Not to say that Devin Booker ended up being fantastic because he wasn't, but there were plenty of other alternatives. I went pretty cheap at guard once the news came out. Like I went with a Rondo and Elfrid Payton and some Drew, and I think that made it so much easier to get away from Beal. It feels like getting away from Beal here has similar merit with a slate that also has a lot of reasonably priced players around him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I ran kind of a dummy crunch before the show, and I didn't use my exposure caps or anything. I kind of just capped everyone at 60% and let it go. So it's not totally indicative, but it does show, kind of where I have guys projected, and I didn't get any Beal in that dummy crunch. So certainly not someone that I expect to be a priority for me.
All right. Let's talk about, before we move on, is there anything else with Washington that stands out? I know yesterday you had some low-key tournament interest in guys like Jeff Green and some cheaper players. Anybody else here that stands out?
I don't hate Satoransky just because of the minutes he's playing. He played 38 yesterday. I think he's played like 36 and 39 in his 2 prior games. The production obviously comes and goes, but the price tag's low enough where I think he's a relatively decent option. But again, there's so much value at the guard position today that it's not a priority. As far as the front court goes outside of Porter, though, I'm not really interested there because it's tough to see Jeff Green closing against Vooch. It's tough to see Thomas Bryant having success defending him. So I think you could see a rotation where, Bryant maybe loses a couple of minutes to Mahinmi and Green loses a couple of minutes, and they're all kind of just not really that useful.
All right, then let's keep it going because we've got a whole lot to talk about here and not a whole lot of time. We never do. Cleveland and Miami. I actually DM'd you this morning or probably afternoon, felt like morning to me, mentioning the rates that Tyler Johnson has seen with Richardson and Winslow on the court since the start of December. They're surprisingly really high. And here, let me 20. Laffy said low key, confirmed narc. Yes, that's it. Check this out though. Since the start of December, Tyler Johnson has a 24% usage rate with Winslow and Richardson on the court. It's higher than both of them. Richardson's at 15%, Winslow at 21.9. But he also has 1.18 fantasy points per minute, only 188 minutes over that span. But it goes to show you that that Johnson is not just completely phased out when he is playing alongside these guys. He started their last game. He played, 35 minutes, 36 minutes. And in those minutes, he led the team in drives, had 15 drives to the rack, or 16. He did pass on 10 of them, but still, and was, I think, second or third in touches. So just because Tyler Johnson's starting alongside them, isn't starting at the point, doesn't mean that he actually hasn't been pretty productive with those two on the court this season.
Yeah, Josh and I noticed that this morning. I was actually looking to see if Tyler Johnson being out there had any sort of a negative impact on Justice Winslow as far as, sharing the ball goes. And I've noticed that, since the start of December, I had just looked with Winslow and Johnson on. Johnson was at like a 22% usage rate. The thing is, like, even if you don't put those guys on, because in theory, like, his usage should not increase because he's playing alongside those guys. But even if you just look at his total minutes since the start of December, he's played 556 minutes. He has a 20.5% usage rate. He's averaged 0.84 DraftKings points per minute. If you just take those rates, which are lower than the stuff that you just said, I still get him projected as one of the absolute top values on the slate in 32 minutes, which is even lower than he played last game. So I really like Tyler Johnson in the spot.
I do too. And he's cheap.
Right.
So especially, on Fan or DraftKings 4,200, sorry, reading chat here. Manningdale said, he said, Laffy, your response to the Randall news at the end of yesterday's show was priceless. I rewatched it today. I might have to go back and look. I just remember just falling back into my chair thinking, okay, this is what we don't deserve this.
I thought you were about to just like roll out from the show.
But yeah, Tyler Johnson is probably going to go, I would say, with all of the value that we have right now, Tyler Johnson's projected as one of the higher owned players on this slate, which does surprise me a little bit. But if you start getting guys confirmed out, like in Minnesota, right, and in other teams where we have a bunch of questionables, I wouldn't be surprised to see that come down a bit. The question I have to you is, Spoelstra played a 9-man rotation, so he shortened it up. Tyler Johnson started in place of Magruder, and Magruder didn't play. It was a 9-man rotation, and Tyler Johnson actually saw more minutes than everyone not named. I think it was Richardson. I think the only guys that play more minutes than him were Richardson and or not even Winslow, Richardson and someone else, but only a couple, right? What do you make of this rotation here today against Cleveland?
So it obviously comes with the caveat that nobody knows what Spoelstra's actually doing. But
exactly.
I feel a little bit more confident with the Rodney Magruder not playing thing than with before, when you had Waiters not playing and then Jones not playing and then Olynyk not playing, because we had seen Magruder really being phased out. He played 15 minutes 2 games ago. He played 8 minutes the game before that. Then he didn't play. And then we've had Olynyk not play 2 games in a row now as well. It seems like maybe Spoelstra has finally settled on a rotation that he's happy with, because the thing is, like, as inconsistent as he had been and as many quality players as he has, it's not actually sustainable for the rest of the season to think that either A, he's going to play 11 guys every game, or B, he's going to just piss off half the team by benching them 1 out of every 3 games. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is one of the more long-term sustainable looks that we've gotten from Miami in a while. And until he screws it up or changes it, I'm going to assume that it's, kind of going to stay the same going forward.
Yeah, I'm with you, because otherwise we can't just start pretending that, we can't just start putting hypotheticals out there and be like, oh, this could happen, so we'll go with this. As of now, with the intel, with the information we have, we kind of have to assume that this is what we're going to get until we don't.
Right.
Anybody else, though, for Miami? Again, Spoelstra, despite having a lot of bodies, ran with a 9-man rotation. And I will say, Adam, that for the first time in a while, we got Whiteside right, and it was a really good feeling.
Yeah. So you can do the same thing with Whiteside and Bam, obviously, where just kind of project them both for where they could get to minutes wise and don't play them together.
He's up $900. He's up $900 since last, which is that $6K price point definitely mitigated a lot of the risk.
Right. Like if I project Whiteside for 28 minutes, I'm still not getting a lot of him. I have Tyler Johnson's my favorite guy from this team, but beyond that, if Waiters plays, I think he's fine at 4,100. I think Justice Winslow is a pretty good play at 6,200. But Tyler Johnson's the one I like the most. Me
too. The rest would be just secondary, maybe tertiary guys that you just kind of sprinkle in if necessary. Anything for Cleveland for you, Adam?
Nope.
Larry Nance. Larry Nance is expected to play, but at this rate, there's just no reason, right? There's no reason to go here anymore.
I don't have a single player on the Cavs projected above 26 DraftKings points.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Sexton, if I was, put it this way, if I was getting Sexton at, say, Tyler Johnson's price point, then I'd have something to talk about. But
Yeah.
I'll just take the $900 savings on Johnson.
Right. Sexton is my favorite Cavalier.
Right. 47 on FanDuel is reasonable. Like you don't hate it, but why? The problem is there's a ton of guard value today, like a ton right now, and there could be more depending on what happens in Minnesota. Yeah, I'm talking about Jared Bayless. Well, of course, if Tyus Jones is out as well, we'll get to that later. There could be a lot of value freeing up here at guard, and there already is a lot.
And it's a good time to just kind of remind people that, like, yeah, Colin Sexton at 4,700 or 5K is value, but there's a big difference between 4,700 or 5K value and 3,500 or $3,000 value in terms of, like, you're not going to find a bigger like percentage difference between prices than there, as far as, you know, guys that are still in like the same tier where they're cheap. Like getting a 3K guy, it's really hard for him to fail in terms of what you need from him to make it worth, you know, using that roster spot. Whereas a 4,500 or 5K guy, it starts getting really, really easy for them to still underperform given the opportunity cost of rostering them.
Exactly right. Exactly right. All right. Let's talk Brooklyn and New York. We've got hold on. We have I can't pronounce. Jafar says, "Congrats, Adam, for your win."
Thanks.
Did you win yesterday too?
No, I got fourth in something, but
I guess he's talking about the one from.
Yeah. Either way, thanks.
Well, yeah, nice of him to do with a bunch of these hand emojis. All right, Brooklyn, New York Knicks. I would have felt really bad if I didn't mention it at the end of or at the beginning of the show. That's why I had to make sure. Brooklyn and New York Knicks. This one is pretty interesting too. The Knicks are 9-point road dogs here. Spencer Dinwiddie, we got the torn ligaments in the thumb. 222.5 point total. We know this. Shabazz Napier was going to be the highest owned player on the slate. Now he's going to be neck and neck with Mason Plumlee, especially on DraftKings where Plumlee's got the power forward center eligibility. I think on FanDuel, I expect Napier to be higher owned because, you know, opportunity cost at center. But, you know, Napier, when Harris and Carroll were out a couple weeks ago, or a little less than that, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, he played 33 minutes. He also played 33 minutes when Russell was out against Milwaukee at the end of December, blowout, but he played 33 minutes there too. It is hard to imagine that Napier doesn't inherit a lot of those minutes. Now, they do have Theo Pinson, and they also have, you ready for this one? Mitch Creek, who has just been signed to a 10-day contract, but there's no reason to believe that Napier doesn't get the first crack at good minutes in place of Dinwiddie.
Yeah, I have Napier at 26 minutes here. It wouldn't be surprising to me if that's a little bit low, but I am getting all of the Napier that I can get, even at that. So, the price tag's really appealing, and he's not a guy that it's not like it's an unproductive player getting moved into more minutes like with Treveon Graham. You know, this is a guy that gets plenty of usage. He does pick up assists. He's productive enough when he's on the floor, and he's in a phenomenal matchup against the Knicks. So he's right there with Plumlee as one of my favorite, and Tyler Johnson as a favorite value on the slate for me. I don't really have any reason not to like Napier.
Yeah, neither do I. I have him at 28 minutes right now. I wouldn't be surprised if he played 30.
No.
Yeah, it's also the New York Knicks, Adam. I mean, it's a bad basketball team, and you know, if you are somebody worried about blowouts, well, he'll probably play through a blowout anyway. As if you missed yesterday's show, we won't get back into it, but you know, not something we're worried about. And yesterday was kind of funny too, because you look at Golden State and Washington. Like Golden State was up by 12 after 3. They ended up winning by 8, and all of the starters played their regular minutes.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one? Pelicans and OKC. Ended up being like a 6 or 8 point game. Everyone got their regular minutes. You know, Westbrook had a monster game. Elfrid Payton, Holiday, big games. Darius Miller, big game.
Yeah. No,
That's
I was
so
actually
crazy.
pretty excited. I was looking forward to getting to the Phoenix game today because I was going to tell you that I was definitely projecting a blowout there as far as minutes go. But then Jokic isn't playing, so no, I'm not.
Yeah. Look, there definitely are exceptions, no question. And the funny thing though, by the way, the one game that was, well, Phoenix and Portland blew out towards the end, but the Lakers Minnesota game had a 1 point spread and ended up, blowing out towards the end, even though everyone still got their minutes because the blowout didn't happen towards the end of the game.
Right.
Uh, Whatever. Anyway, Napier, we talked about him. What about the rest of this team with the Joe Harrises, the Damari Carrolls, the Jarrett Allen, who, the minutes, even though he had some really solid outings, Kenny Atkinson still is not willing to just give him consistent 30 plus per game. Ed Davis has started seeing more run again lately after falling off a cliff. Rondé Hollis Jefferson's questionable with a sprained shoulder, so that comes into play as well. A lot of moving parts for this Brooklyn team. Even with Dinwiddie out, they still have a decent amount of body. Hell, even with Karis LeVert and Alan Crabb out, there's still a lot of players on this team on the active roster.
Yeah, so I mean, right now I have Hollis Jefferson projected not to play, and if that's the case, then I really like a ton of guys from this team. Obviously, it doesn't make a huge difference on the surface, but it's still like 14 minutes that have to go to some of these guys, and I would end up with Joe Harris around 34 minutes, Carroll at 30, Kuric's at 30, and those guys would all become pretty appealing. Regardless, I think Joe Harris is somewhat appealing. Like I think you get 32 to 34 minutes from him. It's obviously a really good matchup against the Knicks. I wish he was a little bit less expensive, but I think that the minutes should be there. And then I do really like Jarrett Allen. I only have him projected for 28 minutes, but still just a really, really nice spot against this front court, against this team in general. And he certainly at least has the upside for more playing time.
Yeah, I'm with you here. What what type of prioritizing can you do with Jarrett Allen? That's one thing. Like if you're playing single entry or three max, Jarrett Allen. It's not to say you can't get to him, but it is going to be more difficult than if you're getting 20% of him in 150 lineups.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's something to consider.
Yeah, no
But
question. And like to put it into context on that like dummy crunch I did with guys capped at 60%, he was the highest owned center I had that was not hitting that cap. So like Millsap, Plumlee, Portis, Towns all hit 60%, and then Allen was at like 11. But that was
okay,
that was like my highest guy other than those four.
right, exactly, and that's the thing. You'll have some of them, but single, 2, 3 lineup that it gets a little bit different, especially with the value at center. Um, but 58 on DraftKings, 66 on FanDuel is very reasonable. D'Angelo Russell's dropped 54 plus DraftKings points in 4 of his last 5 games. He looks outstanding. And the amazing thing is that we've been saying this really all season on the deeper dive. Like you get some bad games from Russell. He has had a low floor at times, especially given that Atkinson has not really wanted to run him in games where, Dinwiddie gets hot and Russell plays like 25, 26 minutes. Hasn't been the case lately, though. The minutes have been very consistent outside of that game against Houston, where of course Spencer Dinwiddie got real hot, and then Russell watched from the bench as they beat him in overtime. But you think about this, with Dinwiddie off the court this year, Russell has the same rates, right? Like 31% usage, 38% assist rate, pretty solid. I think like 1.23 fantasy points per minute. But what I like most about this is you run so much less risk of somebody like Dinwiddie getting hot off the bench and potentially stealing minutes from Russell.
Right. And if you go and look like over the last month, over the stretch where Russell's been playing really well, he has been better, overall, but also without Dinwiddie. He over 244 minutes without Dinwiddie on the floor. He's averaged 1.36 DraftKings points per minute, 32.5% usage rate, 41% assist percentage. And then the big thing for me, like you said, is that it just helps to solidify the minutes when Napier needs to play minutes at other positions as well. You have Dinwiddie obviously not out there, one to take minutes from Russell, just as part of the normal rotation, but also threatening him if he gets hot. So I think that it's a lot easier to be confident in Russell without Dinwiddie.
Agreed. Um, Atkinson ran a 10-man rotation last game, and that was including Dinwiddie and Hollis Jefferson. So, I mean, if Hollis Jefferson is out along with Dinwiddie, I think really you would just expect, I don't know, Pinson or Creek to get a few minutes there and there, but Russell's minutes are super solidified in this game.
Yep.
Do you have anything from the New York Knicks starting at center where if Noah Vonleh starts again? By the way, he played all of his minutes at the 5 last game, and basically Mitchell Robinson was just his backup, which is pretty interesting given that we saw a bunch of Lance Thomas and Trier and guys that weren't normally getting those minutes getting that run. Kind of like we talked about with Spoelstra and the Heat. How do we go ahead and not just assume the same thing is going to be the case today as it was on Wednesday?
Right. I mean, I think that's pretty much all you can do. Just know that you probably don't want your entire night riding on any one of these guys getting, however many minutes you have them projected for. So, yeah, I mean, I think that Vonleh is a good play. Obviously, we've liked guys against this Brooklyn front court all year long. We really like Vonleh when Enes Kanter is not playing. You see an increase in his usage and his rebounding percentage as well as his assist percentage. So, I think that he becomes, a good play. I think that if Moutier plays at only $5,300, that he's a strong option. Without Kanter on the floor since the start of December, 29.7% usage rate for Moutier, 27.7% assist percentage. He's been very productive without Kanter, which makes sense. The fact that he's questionable obviously is concerning, but if he's in, then I think that he offers some value. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot that I really like. If I get to some Trier, that's fine. If Moutier is out, I'll like Tim Hardaway more. But assuming he's in, I like Moutier more than Hardaway.
I do like Vonleh though. I just feel like he doesn't really run much risk of not getting the minutes. I feel like even if Kanter were to get some minutes, I would just expect Lance Thomas to go back to not playing and Vonleh gets the rest of his minutes at the 4.
Right. Like Vonleh should get around 30 regardless.
Regardless, right. And it's not a bad matchup against Brooklyn. So he's the one place that I don't mind looking here. Obviously, as you pointed out, blowouts can come into play, and we'll have to pay attention to that. But if Kanter doesn't start, I'm assuming again that he's going to get a DNP.
Yeah, especially if Kanter doesn't start and Vonleh starts at center.
Correct. Exactly.
That was the thing that made me pretty sure it was coming last game, and I wasn't able to swap off of it in time. But like if it had just been like Mitchell Robinson starting,
yes.
Right, it would have been okay, whatever. Kanter's playing the backup minutes, but when you put Lance Thomas, a guy who's not in the rotation, into the starting lineup, and you shift down, it just made it really clear. I thought that they were going to just play their wings more minutes and not play Kanter.
And if you guys are wondering what we mean by that, it's just simple math that there's only so many minutes to go around. And if Vonleh's starting at the 5 and you're adding someone in, like Adam said, then it makes it very easy to just, take a thinned out center rotation and make Mitchell Robinson the backup center for the game, whereas Kanter can easily not play at all.
Right. Like we know Robinson is going to play his 18 to 20 minutes or whatever.
Right.
They're not going to go Vonleh, Kanter, and sit Robinson. And normally, if they're going to play 3 centers, Vonleh would be the one that picks up like 6 minutes at center or something. So the fact he's starting at center made it just kind of like, okay, well, Kanter at best is the 3rd string center. And why would they start Vonleh at center if they're just going to shift him to power forward immediately?
Absolutely right. Let's talk about the Bulls and Clippers here. Chicago at home, 5 points now, 5-point dogs, 221 total. If you look at Chris Dunn, and I know there's going to be a lot of stars and scrubs going on today, so it'll probably be tough to get to him, but he's actually underproducing given what his numbers look like. I mean, he's leading the team in a few categories that are kind of important, like 75 touches per game. He's involved, potential assists, so facilitating opportunities by a wide margin since the start of January. It's just, the production really hasn't matched that. And he's had some pretty awful games. He does get a nice pace-up spot here. So does this entire Chicago team. And he is inexpensive on DraftKings. So I want to talk about him. And also Bobby Portis, who didn't start last game, but started the second half ahead of Robin Lopez. That was the only tweak they made. That was the only tweak Jim Boylan made. So it wasn't like, oh, they're getting smoked, which they were, and I'm going to do a line change in the second half. No, it was Portis, and he didn't have a great game, Adam, but he played 33 minutes. And even if Portis doesn't re-enter the starting lineup, I would still expect about 33 minutes is a high for him this season. Still expect his minutes to look pretty solid given what we saw on Wednesday. What do you have on this Bulls team?
Yeah, I love Portis too. Whether or not he starts, because this is just, for one, it's a good matchup in terms of how he should produce.
Great matchup.
but also just in terms of the minutes. I mean, even if they start Lopez and he matches up with Gortat for 18 minutes, that leaves you, 28 to 30 minutes for Portis, who is perfectly fine being out there with Harrell. So regardless if he starts or not, I absolutely love Bobby Portis. The fact that he's a power forward on FanDuel and has power forward eligibility on DraftKings makes it even easier. I think he's actually cheaper on FanDuel than on DraftKings as well, and he's underpriced on DraftKings. Like for the season, he's averaged 1.08 fantasy points per minute. Since coming back from his most recent injury, he's averaged 1.12. This is a phenomenal matchup. There's nothing for me not to like about Bobby Portis here. I like Chris Dunn. I like Markkanen, nowhere near as much as I like Portis. I like them both more than Levine. The one thing I would point out here is that this game, to me, is one of the more intriguing game stacks on the slate if you're looking to do that, because it's a pace-up spot for Chicago. It's a bad Chicago defense, which obviously benefits the Clippers. But both of these teams have very, very concentrated production. Like the Bulls, a very large percentage of their points are coming from some combination of Markkanen, Levine, Dunn, and Portis. And then on the other side, obviously, a very large percentage of the Clippers' production is coming from Harrell, Lou Williams, and Harris. So you can really game stack this game where both teams are in an appealing spot and potentially, just get a really big game from several guys.
California Cool says, is Jabari Parker not going to play? You can't bet on Portis's, what did he say? You can't, where is it? Oh, chat's moving too quick. You can't bet on Portis's minutes till you get that news.
Parker is expected to play. They play different positions.
Yeah, so if you look at last game, Robin Lopez started, played 15 minutes. Bobby Portis didn't start, played 33 minutes. What's 33 plus 15 again?
Right. So the only difference that I think Parker makes is that if he plays, it makes it a little bit easier for Lauri Markkanen to play a couple of minutes at center. But even if you project Portis for like 28 minutes, you're still going to have a ton of Bobby Portis.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think it's a stupid comment. I mean, it's still another guy that can play in the front court. But really, a lot more of it comes down to what are Robin Lopez's minutes going to look like.
Right. Yeah, because
right?
Portis isn't playing like power forward and center going back and forth. Like he's playing center. So the only impact Parker should have on Portis is how many minutes Lauri Markkanen plays at center now.
Right. And Robin Lopez clearly only plays center. So against Cleveland, Portis played 19. Robin Lopez played 24. So that gives you a couple extra minutes at the 5. Like you said, probably Markkanen. The game before that, you had 24 minutes for Bobby Portis. And Robin Lopez against Miami played 21, and they're both playing at the 5. So even if that's the case, you're leaving like an additional maybe 3-4 minutes to the center position that aren't soaked up by both Robin Lopez and Bobby Portis. Anything else for Chicago?
No, I mean, beyond those 4 guys, like, why would you want anyone?
Yeah, you don't. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of game stacking. I like Portis the most, but Markkanen and Dunn do stand out to me as pretty decent plays. What about the LA Clippers? Danilo Gallinari remains out here, and that's pretty much the news we've got there. Nothing else different.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a great spot for Harrell. He should probably get back to around 30 minutes here against a Bulls front court that he should have plenty of success against. Tobias Harris played a little over 39 minutes last game. I have him projected for 38 here. I think that's a very reasonable spot to be at. The rebounding percentage goes up a bit without Gallinari. The assist opportunities go up a little bit, so he becomes a really productive player in a good spot against a bad Chicago defense. And then Lou Williams, I think, is an interesting tournament play, or again, game stack play, because he played 21 minutes last game, but you have to remember that was a back-to-back where he was coming back from injury. They had said before the first game he'd be limited. I think he played 22 or 23 minutes. Then he played 21 minutes. I don't have a reason why he wouldn't get back to his 28 minutes here against Chicago now that he's had a day or two off since that back-to-back. And without Gallinari on the floor, you're looking at a 34.5% usage rate, almost a 34% assist percentage for Williams over the last month and a half. So I think that he probably goes overlooked because of his game logs, but I think he gets back to like 28 minutes here.
Okay. That sounds good to me. We have a little bit of news. Rondae Hollis Jefferson is available to play. By the way, remember how I'd mentioned to you before the show that Dinwiddie was never actually confirmed out? He was questionable. So
Yep.
he was just confirmed out a few minutes ago. Not that we didn't know he wasn't going to play,
Right.
but he is verifiably out. So that's good to know. And Rondé Hollis Jefferson is available to play. Who knows how many minutes, if any, he'll get, but he is available to play. By the way, I just saw the greatest spelling of Arcidiacono in the YouTube chat I've ever seen. Left out about seven letters, which is pretty awesome. And no, Arcidiacono is not a sleeper, just to answer that statement. I'm assuming it was not a question, but more of a statement. Anything else from this game, Adam, before we move on?
No.
All right, Memphis, Sacramento. 2.5-point favorites are the Memphis Grizzlies. 214.5-point total. Really nice pace up spot for the Grizz here. And I don't know how much I'm going to have. I can tell you this much, that Jaren Jackson to me is still stands out as somebody that I will have interest in. It's burned me in the past, but 5,400 on DraftKings, I think even 6K flat on FanDuel, I don't hate. But had it not been for the early foul trouble last game, and yes, he gets in a lot of foul trouble, he would have easily topped 30 minutes for the second straight game. He is the type of guy that has the ability to produce in bunches, or produce fantasy points in bunches, with his 5.5% block rate, double-digit rebound rate, 24% usage rate. Those are solid numbers. So Jaren Jackson's cheap enough for me to look at him here today. What are you doing with Memphis against Sacramento?
I'm with you on Jackson. Obviously, the foul risk comes with him, but the price tag
is baked into that price tag now.
Right, exactly. And it's not like it's a playing time issue. They have as many minutes for him as he can stay on the floor to play. So I think that's obviously really appealing. It's a nice matchup here against Sacramento. So yeah, I mean, I like Jackson in tournaments. He should have really low ownership, so he's a good play. I like Mike Conley's price tag at 77 on DraftKings. I think Gasol's a pretty good play, even at 8,300 as well. I think
Moutier is out, Adam.
Awesome.
Sorry,
more decisions for Fizzo.
Trying to get the news out as it happens, so because we don't have all the time in the world. Go ahead.
So I'm assuming Burke plays for the Knicks, and they'll probably picks up some minutes.
What sucks though is that because Burks has caught Trey Burke, has caught some DNPs. I don't know if it's the illness or whatever, but it's really difficult to say who's going to get a ton of minutes here with Moutier out, because the rotation's already so in flux that you could just see those minutes go 10 here, 10 there, 8 here. This guy might play today.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, for all we know, Hezonja could play 18 minutes and Burke could not leave the bench.
Right, exactly. Sorry, back to what you were saying about Memphis.
I have some interest outside of Jackson and Conley and Gasol. Joakim Noah is not on the injury report, so I think that it's likely we see Gasol play 34 minutes instead of 38. But it's still a really nice matchup against the Sacramento front court if you can get there at center. And I guess if you're looking for contrarian value, you have Garrett Temple playing 36 minutes, Holiday probably playing 36 plus. At least they're guys that aren't, Napier or Okobo or Jared Bayless. It's not that, I really like them. It's just that they should be lower owned than those guys.
Right. Yeah. Holiday's playing a ton of minutes, and that kind of stands out, right? Boston and Toronto he faced, and he wasn't great. He was actually pretty good against Boston. Then New Orleans, Charlotte, played 38 and 40 minutes over his last 2 games. If you're desperate and you come across $4,100 and the guy is potentially playing 38, 40 minutes against Sacramento, you could do worse. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, did you mention Gasol? Sorry.
I like Gasol. I think that he is more likely to play 34 minutes than 38 because of Noah's return, but I still think it's a really good spot for him.
Okay. I personally don't see myself getting there on DraftKings at 8,300. I think he's jumped $900 overnight, but it is still a good spot. Kings get hammered on the boards. Gasol's rebounding too has been better lately. His numbers looked pretty rough earlier in the season, but but he's been good enough. I just prefer where he's not seen his price tag shoot through the roof.
Right.
That floor scares me a bit. Anything on Sacramento here?
No, not at all. Team's fully healthy. Not a great matchup against Memphis. Price tags aren't really down on anyone. So yeah, I don't see it unless we get news that like Marvin Bagley's going to start over Bjelica again. Then he would be really appealing. But assuming Bjelica comes back and plays, any sort of 14 to 16 minutes, it really just takes appeal away from everything.
Was literally going to say the exact same thing. The only interest I'd have here is if Bagley gets the nod, and then that if that's the case, he's probably playing 30 plus minutes. Aside from that, it's definitely tough to get to. We have Houston and Toronto. James Harden coming off a respectable game. 61 points, 15 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 steals, 97 DraftKings points in 40 minutes. And the most beautiful thing is that this team surrounding him right now with Capella and Paul out is so bad that they're only beating the Knicks by 4 points. And somehow Harden is, fueling them to competitive games almost every night outside of that Philly game. And today, Adam, against a good Toronto team, they're only 3-point dogs at home, 229 total. Let's get into it as we do every other show. James Harden.
He's going to shoot a lot. It doesn't matter if he's efficient or not. This is obviously, I think, probably the scariest matchup for him so far because you just have so many good defenders on Toronto, whether it's Leonard, whether it's OG who's back, Danny Green for, some turns. But it doesn't matter. Like he's still going to shoot. He's just that good of a scorer, and he has to carry the offense here. So especially on a slate with as much value, really cheap value as we have, I think that, Harden's still a really good play. Like I have him projecting for 73 points instead of 77 or 78, but it's still really good. If you go back to the start of last season without any of these guys on the floor, 47.5% usage rate, 42% assist percentage, 12.5% rebounding percentage. The assists have been really low lately, like 32 to 34%. But for one, he's just making up for it in shot volume. And for two, I do think that starts to increase the more minutes he plays with Kenneth Faried, the more familiar they get, and then also with Eric Gordon being back. So I think that Harden's still a great play. I will say that at 5,300 on DraftKings, I think Eric Gordon's actually a really good play as well, though.
Okay. Fair enough. I'll tell you this much. Until I see somebody actually shut Harden down, I'm not going to assume it'll happen. Just the volume is too outrageous. And he's faced some good defenses. Let's be fair about this. It's not like he's just had a slew of cakewalk matchups. Yeah, he's had some easy spots. And in those easy spots, he's dropped monster numbers. But in tough spots, too. Harden's faced some difficult matchups, and he's come out on top, not talking about the final score, but his fantasy totals, each and every night, or almost every night. Think about this. Since Chris Paul went down on December 20th, listen to these averages. 44.2 points, 8.1 rebounds, 8.1 assists, 2.1 steals, 1 block, 6.3 threes, and 74 DraftKings points per game. That's over a 16-game span. Crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
46% usage, 44% assists, 11% rebounding, 1.87 fantasy points per minute. Enough said. What did your initial crunch have? How much of Harden?
40% on DraftKings.
I think that's a pretty good number. I like that.
And that's also keeping in mind that I had everyone capped at 60, so there's plenty of guys in there where I'm getting more of them than I'd actually have, and that could potentially drive Harden up as well.
And it is kind of one of those slates with such an immense amount of value. This happened a couple of weeks ago where if Harden were to go for only 70, it could be one of those nights where it doesn't kill you. A lot of nights you see people force Harden in and then another top player, and the value plays, the punts around them are terrible. So Harden might have an 85 fantasy point game, but you still don't cash because, 6 punts tallied 120 total points. This is one of those nights where even if Harden doesn't have the amazing, 90-point ceiling game, you could still get away with, one of his less amazing games.
Right. Yeah, and I mean to put it in context on that crunch again, where everyone was capped at 60%, I got 60% Towns, 60% Giannis, 40% Harden.
Okay. Yeah, that context is pretty important there. Outside of Harden and Gordon, I guess we have to talk about Fareed for a second. Obviously, you and I were on board, as everybody was, rightfully so, against the Knicks. I'm probably jumping off here, though. Are you sticking with Fareed tonight?
No, I don't think I'll have much. It doesn't really even have to do with him. I still really like him as a
The
fantasy
players
player.
around him.
Right, exactly. Like I would rather play Bobby Portis. I'd rather find the money for Harrell. Mason Plumlee is a phenomenal play. There's just so many other spots to go to.
Right. And other tournament pivots like Vonleh or Jaren Jackson are also there. And my expectations are that they see pretty low ownership here. Jaren Jackson's ownership actually right now doesn't seem to be that low, that low. But neither does Vonleh. Neither of them are going to be super high owned at all, though. And again, to be clear, I don't think Fareed will either. I actually expect Fareed to be lower owned than most of them. But just don't think I'm going to pile on him now that price has come up, and it's not the easiest spot against this Toronto team either. What do you make of Toronto and Kawhi Leonard?
I have nothing from Toronto outside of Pascal Siakam. Kawhi is just someone I don't really get to very often in tournaments. He's priced up because of his talent level as he should be, but he just isn't that volatile of a player in that he pretty rarely really exceeds this price tag in tournaments, especially on a slate with as many quality plays as this one has. So I don't think I'll get there much. Siakam I still like because he's a point per minute guy with or without Leonard. He should still play 34, 35 minutes in a pretty nice spot here against Houston. So if I went to anyone from Toronto, it would be him. But in general, I just am not that interested because everyone is priced up at least somewhat. And Leonard coming back just takes a lot of value away from guys like Lowry and Ibaka.
Right. Absolutely. Do you want to move on then?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, so I guess it's another viable game stack just because it's one of the more appealing, competitive games.
Yeah, I could. The problem I have with game stacking Houston is obviously Harden is the first player into a Rockets game stack. Harden's the first guy in from either team.
Right.
What would be the point otherwise? And then you're basically just throwing darts at whoever it might be between a Rivers or a PJ Tucker or Eric Gordon. Gets kind of ugly there, but I could see it. Yeah, if you're playing a low owned Fareed and then on the other side a Kawhi and an Ibaka or whatever. But
I prefer the Clippers Bulls one though. If I had to pick one game stack, I'd go with the Clippers one.
Yeah, I prefer that one significantly more than that. Milwaukee and Charlotte. Haven't done a whole lot of talking about Giannis lately, but this is kind of one of those slates where it allows us to bring him back into the conversation and feel decent about it. He is $10,700 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Giannis is weighing in at 11.3. Did you ever think there would be a time this season where Giannis was $3,100 less expensive than James Harden?
Did you ever think that there would be a time that he was $3,100 less expensive and averaging 1.76 points per minute over the last month, and it wasn't a slam dunk play?
Yep. Incredible, isn't it? I mean, we haven't seen this since the Westbrook, was it 2014 season?
Yeah.
Durant got hurt. And even so, I think Harden's been more impressive. I'd have to go check, but it feels that way.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some Antetokounmpo talk here against a Charlotte team that, for what it's worth, has a bottom 5 defensive rating over the last month and a half.
Yeah, I mean it's a great spot for Giannis. Charlotte obviously struggles defensively. They play fast enough that it's an appealing spot there. They haven't been good in terms of rim protection. They don't really have an answer for Giannis. I think that you'll see Kid Gilchrist play more than normal, but that's not going to deter me from rostering Giannis. The only problem with Giannis is that Milwaukee's so damn good. They just blow teams out constantly, and Giannis doesn't get his full run. But if this game stays close, he should get up around 36 minutes. And there's not that many appealing games on this slate, so that makes it easier to stomach the risk. I think that he's a great play, especially because there is so much guard value on this slate. That's another knock against rostering Harden. Not that it even has anything to do with Harden, but there's so much guard value. You can get a lot of upside by going to Giannis at a much weaker position.
Right. I'm with you. Definitely a weaker position too. By the way, the legend says, Laffy, if Harden goes for 70 tonight, he won't be in the winning lineup. Just saying. Uh, no, I didn't say he'd be in the winning lineup. I said that you could still have a good night. And if I did say he'd be in the winning lineup verbatim like that, then I apologize. But no, what I'm saying is that you could still have a less than, amazing game by Harden standards. Keep that in mind, and not be toast, because there's so much value and so many good 5K plays and 3 and 4K plays that it's not like other nights where you're trying to play, just garbage in the punt spots because you need to get Harden in and another expensive player. It happened the other night, or like 2 weeks ago, with people jamming Harden and Anthony Davis in. They both had like 85 fantasy points, and I had head-to-heads with people that I beat by 50, 60 points with only one of them in the lineup, simply because all of their punts were just finishing with awful numbers. So just want to be clear on that. I'm not saying you're winning a tournament in that respect, but that I don't think it would ruin your night on a night like tonight.
Also, you can win with 70 from Harden. He just didn't help you.
You could. You absolutely could.
Yeah, it's still 70 points.
Right. You absolutely could. But that wasn't what I said.
Right. Yeah.
But really, for 70 fantasy points, it's all relative to the slate. And I think that's really important. Like if he goes for 70 and you've got, I'll just use Miles Plumlee as an example, but he's going to be chalk. Just if Miles Plumlee goes for 40 and you've got that at what, $3,800, and then another punt goes for 35 at 4K, it's still very doable. Like there's still a way with 70 fantasy points from Harden tonight that you could get to 380 on DraftKings.
Right. Yeah. I mean, 70 points is still 70 points. It's just that at that price tag, it didn't like single-handedly put you in contention.
Right. What else do you have for Milwaukee or Charlotte? Because I've seen some projected ownership reasonably high in this game outside of Giannis, and I don't find myself getting there personally. Maybe you're on a different page.
I mean, I like the other pieces on Milwaukee: Middleton, Brogdon, Bledsoe, in that order. But Giannis is the one that, like, obviously I'm prioritizing. It's just that if I don't have Giannis in lineups, I do like getting exposure to Milwaukee. They have a 120 team total. It is a really appealing matchup for everyone. So I like those guys. It's just I like Giannis a lot more. From the other side, the DraftKings price in particular on Kemba, though, at 8,100 is really appealing to me. Especially, if you're pairing him with a Giannis or with Middleton or whoever, because if this game does stay competitive, if Charlotte hangs in there on the road against Milwaukee, there's a really good chance it's on the back of Kemba Walker, and there's a lot of upside at that price tag. Jeremy Lamb at 5,200 is another one that I think's a pretty nice price point, especially as a correlation play trying to keep this game close.
All right, yeah, I guess you and I are on different pages when it comes to Kemba. Just not getting there as much as I thought I would. I was actually a little bit surprised when I looked at our ownership projections to see him, as like a top 15 or whatever player. It might have come down now, but he was up there a little bit higher than I expected. Obviously, no issues with him, but I'd probably end up going a little bit cheaper. And that's the thing. I haven't been paying up as much there. I do want to ask you, though, would you rather Kemba or D'Angelo Russell?
I think it's really close. I have Kemba projected for like 44.5. I have Russell projected for, I think, 46.
Okay.
46.1. So when you factor in the $500 price difference, it would really be an ownership thing.
I have Russell at 48, so that's probably why. But I mean, I like him more anyway. I have Walker at 44.5.
Yeah, I would just gladly play whichever one's lower owned. I do think if you have Walker, it makes a lot of sense to have at least one of the really good Milwaukee guys, just because if Kemba goes out there and drops one of those 50-point games, Giannis is getting his 36 minutes or Middleton's getting his 33 or whatever.
Yeah, very rarely does Kemba explode and it's not a close game.
Right.
Do you want to talk about anything else from this one before we move on?
No, I'm good to move on.
All right, let's do it. By the way, awesemo.com. If you sign up now, you want to join the family over there, you can get 50% off your first month, half off. First month membership cut in half. And all you have to do is go to awesemo.com, AWESEMO.com, and click join now on the homepage. Select your plan, whichever one you'd like. And then when you proceed, it takes you a couple seconds to put your name and info in. Click the coupon, put in Deeper Dive, all one word, Deeper Dive. and check out. Literally, the process takes like less than a minute altogether. So use the promo code Deeper Dive. You'll get you get 50% off your first month, and you can join us in Slack chat, this premium Slack chat where we talk, answer questions, and then shoot the shit all day long for any sport you can think of. We've got the projections, the ownership projections, which come in handy every day. Alex Baker, Awesemo, his content as well, his rankings, projections, the lineup builder, the deep dive that Adam and I put out each day, comprehensive daily breakdowns, and so much more from every other sport, from guys like Ben Rasa, our boy Josh Engelman, and so much more. Okay, that'll do it. And by the way, Adam, you had pointed out that we got the highest viewership of the season on yesterday's deep dive on a 4-game slate. So thank you to our viewers. Much appreciated, man. That's pretty cool on a 4-game slate.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Solid contribution from Ship My Money. Let's keep it going here. Dallas and Detroit. I forgot this game was on the slate. I actually did. Dallas is a 4.5 point favorite, 207.5 total. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, it's all you.
I like Luka. I like Dennis Smith Jr. I don't love them in the context of this slate. I just think the price tag on Dennis Smith playing 34 to 36 minutes is fine. There's plenty of other value at the position, though. I love Luka as a player. I don't think Dennis Smith Jr. really does anything to hurt him. People have talked about it before, but a lot of the reason that his numbers with Dennis Smith Jr. on the floor are worse is because he was just starting out his NBA career. Over the last month with Smith on the floor, he still averaged 1.25 fantasy points per minute. So whatever Luka I get, I'm very happy with. Just, there's a lot of really good plays.
Right. I actually did write up Dennis Smith Jr. today in the deep dive. And I'll just paraphrase what I said. He saw 37 minutes last game after being exiled. Illness, whatever nonsense it was. Is it possible that the Mavs are trying to showcase him and attempt to pull his value out of the trash? Maybe, but that's not something I'm working into research or the projections. But he's 4,800 on DraftKings. If he plays 35 minutes again, then there's value there. 0.88 DraftKings points per minute this season. So if you were to get another 35 minutes from Dennis Smith Jr., I think you could do a lot worse at 4,800.
Yeah, you could probably do better also.
You could probably definitely do better, but he's there if you need him, and he's cheap. But I don't think you do. I saw a lot of discussion in chat about how nobody's going to be on Andre Drummond today, probable in his return from that concussion. You have any interest in getting to Andre Drummond simply because no one's going to play him?
It's a 10-game slate. There's going to be a lot of ways you can differentiate your lineup. I don't think I'm going to get to much Drummond. I'd rather play $8,800 Drummond than $9,900 Blake. But Drummond's my favorite play from the Pistons. I don't expect to have many plays from the Pistons.
Right. Ish Smith's out, by the way, because that matters.
Yeah.
Blake Griffin's price point has elevated because of the Drummond injury. And then when that happens, you have to wait for it to come back down before he's relevant again.
Right.
I guess that's really it. I mean, Dennis Smith, you mentioned Luka. 10 games. Like you said, 9 other games.
Favorite play from the game is Luka. Favorite play from the Pistons is Drummond. I don't mind Dennis Smith Jr.
Right. Just because he's very cheap on DraftKings specifically.
Yep.
And you know what? There's a good possibility he doesn't play 37 minutes again. Like, he can go back to 28 minutes for all we know.
Yeah, and that's what concerns me. If I project him for 36 minutes, he becomes like a pretty decent play. If I project him for 34, that's where the line is for me, is like 34 to 36 minutes.
Right. All right. Let's keep it moving here. Adam Dorn, I'll answer this question real quick because he's a loyal viewer of ours and we like Adam here. He asked, so diving into MME, what would the highest ownership percentage you would have on somebody be? Like tonight, I think being over the field on Napier is plus EV. Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't set my caps yet. I have a formula in Excel that I use based on how often I project them to exceed their target score and based on our projected ownership. So, I mean, it varies from slate to slate. I don't have like a number because I haven't set it up yet.
Okay. Yeah, it does depend a lot on slate to slate too. The honest answer is everybody's different. There are some people that MME every night and they will go balls out on a player. Like there are guys out there that will play, 90 to 100% of someone if they really like them.
Yeah.
Others will set their exposure, cap at 50% or 40%.
Yeah, I have no issue going. Like I mean, I'll play guys up to 100%. That doesn't bother me. Like if my stuff says that I should play him that much and it's someone that I'm confident in the minutes, then I do it.
Risk tolerance definitely comes into play as well, because on those type of nights it could end up going very poorly or really well. But
yeah,
like you said, if you had an Excel program, then it's a little bit different. You kind of let it do the work for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had one of my better nights in a while recently, and I've had my worst night ever recently. Like it's it's a risk tolerance thing.
It absolutely is. That's a good way to put it. Denver and Phoenix. We got 2 games to go here. We got enough time to make it work. Denver, 14.5-point favorites. To give you an idea of how bad Phoenix is, I think the line moved by 1 point when Jokic was out, unless it was already known that he was likely to be suspended. Although the line's much higher than 15, 16 points anyway, and I think it opened at 15.5. It's a 14.5 now, 222-point total. No Nikola Jokic. Obviously, Mason Plumlee is the key target here, and while he's never going to fill Jokic's shoes, he actually is a good rebounder and not a bad passer. He has an assist rate around 20% with Jokic off the floor, and his per-minute production is solid. There's just really no way around Plumlee tonight.
Yeah, there's no way around a couple of guys from the Nuggets for me. Plumlee being the obvious one at 3,900, especially on DraftKings with the power forward eligibility. You said it. It's not like he's a bad player that's just playing more minutes. He does everything. He contributes across the board as well. Not like
just at a lower level than Jokic.
Yeah, exactly. But so obviously a really good play there. Trey Lyles at 3,800 is a good play, I think. Plumlee, shouldn't be playing any minutes at power forward today. I think you can see 22 to 24 from Lyles. He's a good player on a per-minute basis in a great matchup against Phoenix at a cheap price tag. And then the other guy that really jumped out to me that it surprised me was Paul Millsap, who his minutes have been down a ton lately. He played 18 last game, which is really concerning because that was a pretty competitive game. But prior to that, it was 3 consecutive games that were just absolute blowouts. Denver against Chicago, Denver against Cleveland, and then Denver getting blown out by Golden State. Prior to that, you got like 28 minutes from Millsap. I think that there's no reason not to have him at 26 to 28 minutes today. And without Jokic on the floor this season, Millsap has averaged 1.45 DraftKings points per minute in 116 minutes. If you go back to last season, he's at like 1.23 DraftKings points per minute. Really cheap. Doesn't need a ton of playing time in this spot to exceed his price tag. And if he does get it, he just becomes one of the best plays.
Let me actually add to that. If you go back to last season, mind you, Millsap played, I think, 34 games for Denver last year. If you go back to last season, you take Jokic off the floor. Not only it was 1.22 fantasy points per minute with Jokic off, not only is that what he's producing, but there's not another player that is even close to his per minute production with Jokic off the floor. I told you today, I was really surprised to see that Jamal Murray's rates do not change much at all. His assist rate stays at 18%. Per minute production goes from 0.93 to 0.99, pretty negligible. And his usage goes from like 22.5 to 24. Paul Millsap has benefited the most from a straight production standpoint than anybody else. But Plumlee's still my favorite here. I'm just glad you brought Millsap up because I was going to do it if you hadn't. It's tough. The minutes, as you pointed out, have been all over the place, but he has been very productive with Jokic sideline.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think all the risk is baked into that price tag. If you were like 6,300 or something, I'd be a lot more nervous about it. But 5,100 in this spot, I really like Millsap. I also love Gary Harris at 4,400 on FanDuel.
Okay. On the other side of this game, and I want to speed it up a little bit here. You have Phoenix. Kelly Oubre he played like 18, 20 straight minutes to close out yesterday's game. I still have interest in Oubre here. I don't think a blowout affects him. Anywhere else you're going here? Well, if Holmes plays, I have no problem with him either. Go ahead with Phoenix.
If Holmes plays, I really like Holmes. If Holmes doesn't play, well, it doesn't matter. Either way, I like Oubre. I like Booker. I kind of like Elie Okobo. Okobo should play a ton of minutes. He's the absolute minimum, which is really nice. The one thing that's scary is that he's played like 115 minutes alongside Booker this year. He's averaged half a fantasy point per minute. It makes sense because, he loses assists, he loses usage. But at a 3K price tag, I still think that he's fine. It's just if he's going to be really popular, I'll probably be under the field.
Yeah, and if Jamal Crawford doesn't play on the second of a back-to-back, I've seen some rumblings about that. Okobo could easily see 30 minutes here. But
I mean, I have Okobo at 32 minutes anyway.
You have him at 32. Okay, I don't. But okay, there's the difference. Let's close it out here with Minnesota and Utah. Live before lock coming up next, taking you till 7 p.m. Eastern time. We don't really need to talk about Towns. If you missed any of it, you can go back. We already said how much we like him, and we'd like him more with Gobert out. So we've got that out of the way already.
Yeah.
If Teague and Rose don't play, Bayless is going to see a lot of Tyus Jones as well. That's the big thing. They're all questionable.
Jones is already out.
Oh, he was ruled out. Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, Jared Bayless, not even he has over those last 2 games. He leads the team with 14 potential assists per game. 73 touches per game is second to only Karl Anthony Towns, and he's attempted 15 plus field goals in each of them. Like, it sounds ridiculous, but Bayless, if all of them are out, would probably play like 35 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, so right now I have Teague in, and that's just because I wanted to do my early projections with one of those guys in, and I still have Bayless at like 28 minutes, even if one of them plays. Just because, I mean, the team would still be so shorthanded. If they're both out, it's really tough to find a way around him playing a bunch of minutes. The price tag's cheap enough that he's still a very good point per dollar play. The matchup,
and he's been producing.
Right? Yeah. I don't buy into his 0.85 fantasy point per minute production over these last couple of games.
No.
But he's still cheap enough.
It doesn't matter. Fine. Yeah. All right. Close us out here, Adam. We talked Towns. We talked about Bayless. Anything else for Minnesota and for Utah? We're up against it.
Yeah. I like Andrew Wiggins. Still a tough matchup. Rebounding's been up under the new coach. More than that, though, 38 to 40 minutes at this price tag. It doesn't really matter who he's playing. He's still gonna be a good play. From the other side, I like Donovan Mitchell some, not a ton, but I think he's a good enough play. I like Gobert if he's in. If Gobert's out, Favors becomes a phenomenal play. Ekpe Udoh becomes a very good play as well.
All right, there you have it. As always, thanks a lot for tuning in, friends. We appreciate you much. Hit us with a thumbs up. Like the video if you appreciate the content, want to see more. It does us many favors, helps us out a lot. Subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when new content's dropping. Until then, we'll see you back here after the weekend. Stick around. Live before lock coming up next. Good luck tonight.
Good show.